Growing up, I never quite fit into any one mold. I wasn't the prettiest girl in the room or the smartest. I wasn't the tallest or the most graceful. I had a mouth full of braces, skin that didn't always cooperate, and a personality that was, well, a little loud for some people's comfort. But what I had, even though I didn't realize it then, was a story, my story, and over time I learned that if I could own it, instead of trying to run from it, hide it, or shrink it down to make others comfortable, it would become my greatest source of power. See, confidence doesn't arrive at your door wrapped in a ribbon. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder one day and whisper, "Hey, you're ready." Confidence is built, layer by layer, experience by experience, when you decide to stop pretending and start showing up as exactly who you are. Not the filtered version, not the polished, made-for-Instagram version, the real you. Owning your story is about embracing every single part of your journey. The beautiful chapters, yes, but also the ones you'd rather tear out and throw away. And let's be real, we all have those pages, the heartbreaks, the failures, the mistakes that kept us up at night. For a long time, I thought those parts made me weak. I thought they were signs that I wasn't good enough, not strong enough, not deserving enough. But I've come to realize those are the exact moments that make us who we are. Those are the moments that teach us resilience, that show us what we're capable of when everything around us is falling apart. There was a time early in my career when I was constantly being told who to be, smile more, don't be so opinionated, you should dress like this, act like that. At one point, I started to believe them. I started to think that maybe if I just followed all the rules, I'd finally be enough for the world. But the problem with trying to be everything to everyone is that you lose yourself in the process. And I remember waking up one day and thinking, whose life am I living? Because it certainly didn't feel like mine, so I made a decision. I was going to take back my story, and not just the parts that made headlines or fit into neat little success narratives. I was going to take back the awkwardness, the failures, the confusion, the vulnerability. I was going to wear all of it like armor, because when you stop hiding from your story, you take away its power to shame you. You turn it into something else, something you can stand on, something you can share, something that reminds someone else they're not alone. Here's the thing, your story doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It's not supposed to. We live in a world that constantly tries to put us in boxes, by gender, by culture, by appearance, by age, and if you don't fit the mold, the world tells you to reshape yourself. But what if you're not here to fit a mold? What if you're here to break it? What if the very things that make you different are the things that are going to open doors not just for you, but for people who look like you, sound like you, dream like you? I used to think that being the only Indian woman in a Hollywood room was a disadvantage. I felt the pressure to prove that I belonged, to blend in so that no one would question my place, but then I realized I don't want to blend in. I want to stand out. I want to walk into every room like I own it, not because I'm arrogant, but because I've earned my space, because I bring something unique to the table, because no one else has lived my life, loved the way I've loved, lost the way I've lost, or dreamed the way I've dreamed. And the same goes for you. No one else has your exact story. No one else has your voice, your perspective, your pain, or your purpose. And that's why it's so important that you own it, because the world needs your truth. It doesn't need another copy of someone else. It needs you, the real you, the raw you, the version that sometimes doubts and sometimes breaks and sometimes gets back up even when no one's clapping. There is power in vulnerability. Power in saying, this is who I am. I may not have all the answers, but I'm here. I'm trying, and I'm not going to apologize for existing. That's what owning your story looks like, not perfection, not a highlight reel. Just presence, just honesty, just the courage to stand tall in your own skin. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just starting out, whether you're in the middle of a mess, or whether you're rebuilding after a storm, know this, your story matters. You matter, and you don't need permission to shine. You just need to decide that you're worth it, because once you own your story, nobody can use it against you, and more importantly, you give others permission to own theirs too. That's where confidence begins. That's where freedom begins. That's where power begins. There's a strange myth out there that confidence comes when you're finally ready, when you've figured it all out. when you've rehearsed every word, ticked every box, and gotten approval from everyone in the room. But I'm here to tell you that moment may never come. Most of the boldest, most game-changing moves in my life happened not because I was ready, but because I dared to say yes when I wasn't. People often think that saying yes is about confidence, but actually, it's how you build confidence. You say yes, and then you grow into the version of yourself who can handle what's next. You say yes, and then you figure it out. That's been the rhythm of my life. Jump and build the wings on the way down. When I got the call for Quantico, I was already a well-established actress in India. I had worked for over a decade, done over 50 films, and received accolades and awards. But stepping into an American network TV show as the lead, that was a whole new game. I wasn't sure how I'd be received. I didn't know if my accent would be accepted. I had never done a full series in English in a lead role before. I didn't even know how American pilots worked. Everything in me said, this is too new, too foreign, too risky. And then one voice in my head whispered, say yes. So I did, and I figured it out as I went. That's the thing. If you wait until you feel completely ready, you may never take the leap. You'll wait for perfect timing. You'll wait for guarantees. You'll wait for someone else to validate your potential. But growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens when you're scared, when your knees shake, when you say yes and think, oh my God, what have I just done? That's when the magic begins. Too often, we're trained to second-guess ourselves. Especially women, especially people from communities that have been told to shrink, to wait their turn, to play it safe. We're taught to believe we have to be 100% qualified before we speak up, raise our hand, or step forward. But here's the truth. Most of the people who are out there doing big things, they didn't have it all figured out when they started. They just had the guts to start. Saying yes before you're ready is a radical act of self-trust. It means betting on yourself even when you don't have all the answers. It means believing that you are capable of learning, adapting, and becoming who the moment requires. And that belief, that's the seed of real confidence. When I first came into the global spotlight, I was constantly aware of how different I was. Different accent, different cultural references, different way of seeing the world, and trust me, it's intimidating to be the first or the only in the room. But every time I chose to say yes instead of shrinking away, I learned something. I gained strength, and I proved to myself that I didn't need to know everything on day one. I just needed to show up. There's a line I've always loved. If someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure you can do it, say yes, and learn how to do it later. That doesn't mean faking it forever. It doesn't mean pretending you're something you're not. It means recognizing that you're allowed to grow into your greatness. You don't have to arrive perfect. You just have to be willing. That willingness opens doors, not just to jobs or roles, but to new parts of yourself. When you say yes to a challenge, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. You uncover resilience you hadn't yet tapped into. You stretch, you stumble, you rise. And suddenly the version of you that once felt unqualified now feels unstoppable. Of course, saying yes doesn't mean things will be easy. There will be moments of self-doubt, times when you wonder if you've made a mistake. There will be setbacks, critics, and times when you're learning in real time, under pressure. But let me tell you something. That's how every meaningful chapter of my life has started, with a yes, not a perfect plan. If I had waited until I felt completely ready to do half the things I've done, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have crossed into Hollywood. I wouldn't have started a production company. I wouldn't have written a book, or spoken on world stages, or taken on roles that terrified me. I would have stayed in my lane, stayed in my comfort zone, played small, and I'm not built for small, neither are you. So the next time opportunity knocks and you feel that wave of doubt, I want you to remember this. Feeling nervous doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you care, it means you're growing, and growth is supposed to feel uncomfortable. That's the price of becoming. Say yes even if your voice shakes. Say yes even if you're the only one in the room who looks like you. Say yes, even if you're still figuring it out, because if you keep saying yes before you're ready, one day you'll wake up and realize you are ready, you always were, you just needed to believe it, and that belief. That's where your power begins. When I look back at my life, at the different chapters of my journey, starting from a small town in India to becoming a global entertainer, one thing stands out more than the awards, the fame, or the milestones. It's the noise, the constant, relentless, exhausting noise. Opinions, judgments, expectations, comparisons, from the outside world, from the media, from people I didn't even know, and yes, sometimes even from myself. You see, silence isn't just about the absence of sound. It's about the presence of clarity. It's about learning how to filter out the noise that doesn't serve you so you can actually hear your own voice. The world will always have something to say, always. It will tell you who you should be, how you should look, how you should speak, what dreams are realistic, and which ones are too much. The world will praise you 1 minute and tear you down the next. If you try to chase approval, you'll be running forever, I know. I've been there. When I first started acting, I didn't come from a film background. I didn't have a famous last name. I didn't know the rules, and honestly, I didn't care much for them. I just wanted to act, but very quickly I realized that being in the public eye meant people thought they had a right to define me. She's too Western. She's not Indian enough. She's doing too much. She's trying too hard. I was constantly being put into boxes by people who had never walked a day in my shoes. At first, I tried to mold myself. I thought if I could just fit the part a little better, if I could just be what they wanted me to be, then maybe I'd finally feel accepted. But here's the thing, the more you listen to that noise, the further you drift from yourself. You start to lose sight of who you were before the world told you who to be. And then one day I stopped. I stopped trying to be everyone else's version of enough. I stopped seeking permission. I decided that I wasn't going to shrink to fit into anyone's narrative. Instead, I was going to write my own. That decision, to silence the noise and listen to myself, changed everything. Silencing the noise doesn't mean you ignore constructive feedback or pretend negativity doesn't exist. It means you become intentional about what voices you allow into your headspace. It means you ask, is this helping me grow, or is this holding me back? Not all noise comes from the outside either. Some of the loudest critics live inside us, that little voice in your head that says you're not good enough. You're not ready? Who do you think you are to dream that big? That voice has been in my head too, especially when I was taking risks, when I was stepping into Hollywood, trying something new, daring to dream beyond borders. There were moments when even I doubted myself, but the key is learning to challenge that inner noise just as fiercely as you challenge the outside noise. You start asking different questions. What if I am enough? What if I'm exactly where I need to be? What if I do belong in this room, even if I'm the only one like me here? Because chances are, if you were called to that opportunity, it's not by accident. You have something valuable to offer. But you can't access that power if you're constantly drowning in distractions and doubts. We live in a world that's louder than ever. Social media has turned everyone into a critic. Likes, comments, shares. They can feel like a public scoreboard of your worth. But here's the truth. Validation that comes from outside can be taken away in an instant. Real power comes from within. It comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to the table, even when no one else sees it yet. There's strength in solitude, there's clarity in stillness. You have to create moments where you disconnect, not just from devices, but from expectations, comparisons, and the need for constant approval. You need time to reconnect with your intuition, your values, your truth, because the world doesn't need another version of someone else. It needs the fullest, most fearless version of you. And that version emerges not when you're surrounded by noise, but when you find the courage to create space to breathe, to reflect, to be. So when people question your choices, when they label you, underestimate you, doubt you, don't react. Don't try to prove yourself to every voice. Just pause, listen not to them, but to you. Ask yourself, what do I know to be true about me? What matters most to me? What feels aligned with my purpose, my heart, my soul? Because once you can hear your own voice clearly, no one else's opinion can drown it out. And that's when the shift happens. You stop living reactively. You stop performing for applause. You start moving with intention. You start making choices that reflect who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. That's the kind of power that lasts, the kind that doesn't waver with trends or opinions, the kind that can't be taken away. So silence the noise, not to ignore the world, but to hear yourself more deeply, because in that silence you'll find something unshakable. You'll find you. When I first heard the phrase "work like you own the place," it struck something deep in me. Not because I was thinking about literally owning a building or a business, but because of what that mindset really means. It means showing up with authority. It means believing in your value, even when nobody hands you the title. It means walking into a room, not arrogantly but unapologetically, as if your presence matters, because it does. Too often we wait for permission. We wait for someone to tell us we belong, that we're good enough, smart enough, experienced enough to take the lead. But let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. If you keep waiting for someone to hand you power, you might be waiting forever. You have to claim it. You have to act like the space is already yours, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against you. When I started out in the entertainment industry, I was young. I didn't know anyone. I had no background in film. I wasn't part of the inner circle. But what I did have was a strong sense of responsibility for every opportunity I was given. Whether it was a small scene or a leading role, I treated it like it was mine to own. Not just to perform, but to elevate. I paid attention to the details. I brought ideas. I showed up early. I gave more than what was asked. Because to me that wasn't just a job. It was a statement I deserved to be here. That mindset changes everything. When you walk into a space like you own it, you don't shrink. You don't wait to be told what's allowed. You speak up. You take initiative. You become the kind of person others look to, even if your name isn't on the door. Yet, it's not about entitlement. It's about ownership. And ownership is about accountability. When you own something, you care differently. You see problems as yours to solve. You don't say, "That's not my job." You say, "How can I contribute?" That kind of thinking stands out. It builds trust. It makes you indispensable. There's something magnetic about people who carry that energy. You can see it in the way they walk, the way they communicate, the way they handle challenges. They don't just clock in and out. They show up with purpose. They bring ideas, not just tasks. They lead with vision, even when they don't have the official title of a leader. And here's the secret. That's often how leaders are born. Not by being chosen, but by choosing themselves. By showing up day after day with the consistency, the grit, and the belief that their work has meaning, even if no one's watching. When I transitioned into international spaces, Hollywood, global business, philanthropy, I brought that same energy with me. And I'll be honest, there were times I felt intimidated. I'd be in rooms where no one looked like me, no one sounded like me, and I knew people were silently questioning if I belonged. But instead of letting that make me smaller, I leaned into it. I reminded myself I'm not here by accident. I'm here because I earned it, and I'm going to work like it. There's something powerful about owning your space even when it's unfamiliar. It forces you to rise. It stretches your courage. It builds muscle you never knew you had. And over time, people start to see you the way you see yourself. When you work like you own the place, people treat you like you do. I've seen this happen not just in my life, but in the lives of so many people I admire, especially women, especially people who have been overlooked or underestimated. They didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves. They walked in with ideas, with conviction, with presence, and eventually the world caught up. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey, whether you're an intern or a CEO, a student or a self-starter, this mindset applies. Ownership isn't about position, it's about intention. It's about how you carry yourself, how you treat your time, your work, and your voice. It's also about resilience. When you work like you own the place, you take the hits differently. You still fall, still fail, still face rejection, but you don't crumble, you learn, you adjust, you come back stronger, because people who think like owners don't quit when it gets tough, they lean in. And yes, sometimes people will misunderstand you. They'll say you're too ambitious, too confident, too much. Let them, because the truth is, no one ever changed the game by playing small. No one ever broke barriers by staying quiet. So walk into every room like it's yours, not with ego, but with purpose. Own your voice, own your ideas, own your journey. Don't just work for the dream. Work like you own it, because when you start doing that, something shifts. Not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. That's where the real power begins. Not when someone else gives you permission, but when you decide you never needed it in the first place. For a long time, I believed beauty was something outside of me, something to be chased, earned, maintained, something other people got to define for me. Growing up, I didn't fit the traditional mold. My skin was too dark by beauty standards in India at the time. I wasn't the most delicate. I was bold, curious, loud, and I remember being told in subtle and not so subtle ways that I needed to shrink myself, that if I wanted to be beautiful, I had to change. I've spent a large part of my life in front of cameras. In beauty pageants, on red carpets, in film, you might think I'd be the first person to say that beauty is everything, but I'll tell you the truth, real power has never come from how I look. It has always come from how I own who I am. Yes, beauty is power, but not the kind you think, not the kind found in cheekbones or waistlines or perfect symmetry. That kind fades, that kind changes with trends and lighting. The real kind, the kind that leaves people speechless when you walk into a room, comes from within. It's rooted in self, worth in self-trust, in being unapologetically yourself in a world that constantly tells you not to be. I know what it's like to be judged by appearances. I've had my looks dissected publicly for decades. I've heard every opinion, too exotic, not exotic enough, too glamorous, too simple, too Western, too Indian. If I had tried to meet everyone's expectations, I would have lost myself completely, and there were times I almost did. But then I realized something no one teaches you in school or in beauty campaigns. Beauty doesn't start with the mirror. It starts with the mind, when you believe in yourself, when you walk through life knowing your value, it radiates through you. That confidence, that presence, that fire, that is what people respond to. That is what's magnetic, and that is what no makeup or filter can fake. We've all seen it. Someone walks into a room and immediately commands attention, not because they look like a magazine cover, but because they are fully in themselves. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not playing small or pretending. They're just real, and that realness is beautiful. When you embrace who you are, your quirks, your story, your scars, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing perfection and start honoring authenticity. You realize that the things you once tried to hide are often the very things that make you powerful. Take my journey with skin color. For years I tried to lighten my skin because I believed what the world told me, that fairer was prettier. That glow meant erasing the very heritage I came from. But as I grew into myself, I began to understand how wrong that message was. Beauty isn't about fitting a narrow frame, it's about breaking it. It's about redefining it on your own terms, and that shift in perspective didn't just change how I looked at myself. It changed how I carried myself, how I walked through the world, how I took up space. I've also seen how beauty can be used to silence women, to distract from our intelligence, our voices, our ambitions. We're told to be beautiful, but not too bold, appealing, but not intimidating. We're complimented on our looks more than our ideas. And I say enough. We can be beautiful and brilliant, soft and strong, compassionate and commanding. These things are not contradictions. They are layers. True beauty is multi-dimensional. It's the courage to speak up. It's resilience in the face of rejection. It's empathy, drive, and the ability to stand tall even when the world tries to tear you down. It's the laughter lines, the fire in your eyes, the grace in how you rise after every fall. That is beauty, that is power, and once you recognize that, everything changes. You stop comparing yourself. You stop obsessing over every photo, every flaw. You stop looking for validation in the wrong places. You realize that the person in the mirror is not someone to be judged, but someone to be honored. Yes, wear what makes you feel good. Do your hair, your makeup, your skincare, if it brings you joy, but never let anyone convince you that your worth depends on your looks. Because real power isn't found in what others see, it's found in what you believe about yourself. You are not beautiful because someone says so. You are beautiful because you say so, because you carry yourself with intention, with kindness, with conviction, because you show up for yourself. That kind of beauty, anchored, intentional, authentic, is untouchable. So when I say beauty is power, I don't mean the kind sold in bottles or praised on red carpets. I mean the power that comes from owning your truth, from standing in your light even when it's uncomfortable, from refusing to let anyone else define your worth. That's the kind of beauty I've fought to embrace. That's the kind I want every person, especially every young girl, to know they already have. And once you tap into that, there's no turning back. You stop playing small. You start showing up for life, fully, boldly, unapologetically. And that, right there, is the most beautiful thing in the world. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that being perfect is the goal, that to be admired, respected, or successful, we have to be flawless, perfect in how we look, perfect in what we do, perfect in how we present ourselves to the world. But let me tell you something I've learned through every rise, every fall, every mistake, and every triumph. Flawless is an illusion. It's a story we tell ourselves, and chasing it will only exhaust you, distract you, and make you feel like you're never enough. I've been called a perfectionist. I've worked in industries where appearances matter, where reputation matters, where the pressure to be polished at all times is overwhelming. I know what it feels like to strive for flawlessness, to want to prove yourself, to be everything to everyone. But I also know that the moments that truly changed my life, the ones that shaped me, strengthened me, and made me who I am, were never perfect. They were messy, they were uncomfortable, they were raw. And they required one thing above all else, courage, because in this world, being fearless matters so much more than being flawless. Fearlessness isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and moving forward anyway. It's raising your hand even when your voice shakes. It's saying yes to the job, the audition, the opportunity, even when you're not sure you're ready. It's standing up for yourself in rooms where no one else will. Fearlessness is showing up as you are, even if you haven't figured it all out yet. When I look back at my journey, from a small town girl with big dreams to a global career that spans film, music, entrepreneurship, and activism, none of it happened because I was perfect. It happened because I was willing to take risks, to leap before I was entirely sure, to learn in public, to fail and get back up. People often see the highlight reel, the red carpets, the accolades, the magazine covers. But what they don't see are the countless times I was terrified, the auditions I bombed, the criticism I took, the inner doubts I fought through. Fearlessness is what got me through. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. Social media makes it even worse. Everyone's lives look curated, glossy, effortless. And we start believing the lie that we're the only ones struggling, the only ones doubting, the only ones trying to keep up. But the truth is, everyone is fighting their own silent battles. Everyone is figuring it out as they go. And the most powerful thing you can do in a world like that is to show up anyway, keep moving forward, even with your imperfections in full view. I've learned that it's in our flaws that our humanity shines. It's in our vulnerability that we find connection. When you drop the act of being perfect, you make space for authenticity, and authenticity is where real strength lies. It's what allows people to relate to you, to trust you, to be inspired by you. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to always have the right answer. What you need is the willingness to try, to stumble, and to grow. What you need is the grit to keep going when it gets hard. What you need is belief in yourself even when the results haven't shown up yet. So many people don't chase their dreams because they're waiting to be ready. They're waiting to feel confident, waiting for the perfect timing, waiting until they've polished every skill and covered every angle. But life doesn't work that way. If you wait until you're flawless, you'll never move, you'll never launch, you'll never speak, you'll never rise. I've made choices that were bold. Sometimes they were misunderstood. Sometimes they were ahead of their time, but I made them anyway because I refused to let fear dictate my path. I would rather fail trying than succeed by staying small. Being fearless also means being kind to yourself. It means acknowledging that growth is a process, that mistakes are not signs of failure. They're proof that you're pushing boundaries, stepping into new spaces. They're evidence that you're in the arena, playing the game, instead of sitting on the sidelines waiting for perfection. I want every young woman, every dreamer, every person who's ever felt not good enough to hear this. You do not need to be flawless to be worthy. You do not need to be perfect to lead, to create, to matter. You need to be brave. You need to be present. You need to be real. When I say be fearless, not flawless, I mean take the pressure off. Let go of the impossible standards. Stop editing your story just to please others. Start trusting your voice, your instincts, your fire. Let yourself be seen, not as a perfect image, but as a full, complex, beautiful human being with layers and flaws and dreams and power, because fearless people change the world. Flawless people don't exist, and in case no one has told you lately, your imperfections are not your weakness. They are your strength. They are what make you unique. They are what will connect you to the people you're meant to reach and the impact you're meant to make. So go ahead, speak up, show up, mess up, rise again, be bold, be imperfect, be fearless. That's where your real power lives.